Hello and welcome to SME TV. I'm your host, Angela Vithoulkas, bringing you the latest in news and views for the SME community. Please remember, by subscribing to our YouTube channel, you're showing your support not just for us, but for all SMEs. And we encourage you to comment and, of course, to share SME TV. Where do you stand with networking? Well, I Googled it, as you do, and Google said networking is the linking of computers to allow them to operate interactively. And then it gave me an example. The demand for wireless networking is rapidly increasing. At first I thought it was wrong, but then I thought, perhaps not. So joining me today to reimagine the definition of networking is Matt Alderton, CEO and founder of BX Business Networking. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Angela. Good to be here.
Do you like my cheeky definition of networking?
You've actually identified my SEO challenge. So I'm often having this conversation with the team that manage our SEO, because we're always fighting with people. They're looking for business networking and they're working out how to connect their computer.
That's right. And that's what comes up immediately. And at first I struggled. I was just looking for some synonyms, and as it was working through and I started reading definitions, and then when it used the word networking and then it said wireless networking is rapidly increasing, I thought, you know what, in a strange way, that's a little bit of the parallel that's actually happening now for you with networking and those challenges that you've pivoted and overcome, and we'll get to that. But there's some really important and serious statistics I want to look at with you just quickly. You have well over 1,000 networking events annually.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I'm not sure if you've done this information and breakdown, and you might want me to take this offline for you, but I've worked out that that's somewhere between 20 to 50,000 meals, because your networking is often with either breakfast or lunch.
Yeah.
Maybe 100 or 200,000 coffees. And you know what? 400,000 pieces of cutlery too, Matt.
You're wondering
I did
how
some
look
calculations.
Thanks. I don't know how I stay so thin, right?
Well, I was going to say, all you do is eat, mate. You're telling us all you're in charge of the networking, but all you're doing is hanging out to have a meal, whether it's breakfast or lunch.
That's the beauty, Angela, of networking. You know, if you have a mindset to get a return on investment and you have a process and a framework to create it, once you've developed that as part of your strategy, then the rest is just enjoying yourself and having breakfast or lunch or drinking wine and coffee. Of course, there was a time where I did get to all the meetings. I don't quite get to all of them anymore, especially with travel restrictions makes that a little challenging these days. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of, and it's great. It's like when you think about it from a small business perspective, not only are we helping lots of other business owners, you know, market their businesses, we're also putting income into the back pocket of lots of cafes and restaurants across Australia and New Zealand as well.
Because of where you're holding the networking and how BX views those venues and the criteria and the standard for them. Yeah. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, and I want to focus on the challenge that you faced, because the networking itself, the BX networking, was all face-to-face. Not much of it was offline, and you've had to pivot on that. But let's pull apart the fact that the niche that you're looking at, which is the SMEs, small business owners, they are the ones that have always faced the biggest challenge on networking. When you look at big corporate giants, you know, they're having their golf days, they're having their get-togethers, they're doing wining and dining and having those business moments and signing the contracts on a handshake over a good bottle of red wine. It's the small business owners that have really fallen short of understanding the importance of networking, because of the isolation that they've often felt, because they're just in that zone of at work. So working in it, not on it. And you recognised that many years ago, probably even before you got involved with BX, because of your business coaching background.
I guess the main thing is that lots of business owners, they go into business because they're an expert in something. Whether that's being a bookkeeper or an accountant or a business coach, or, you know, they could be just a golfing expert. Whatever it is that they've gone into business for, they're very rarely an expert in business itself, which means they're not, if they're a golf pro and they've got a golfing business, then they're probably not the world's best bookkeeper or the world's best marketer, or you know, they could be good at some of those, but certainly not all of those. And that's the biggest challenge with small business, I think, anyway, is just that education element and the ability to be able to afford experts across all those marketplaces. But what I recognized through the coaching processes that I did early on, is that, there's a great opportunity to really help small business in this space, which is why I created BX, which was originally an events and education business. We were training small business owners on how to run businesses. But what I soon came to realize is that isolation, that loneliness that many business owners faced, and what we actually provided was a community where people could come together and they could socialize and work with their peers and talk about challenges and get, connected to people that could help them with their challenges. And that fast became, what we were about. And so, it's definitely, it can be a very lonely business, lonely lifestyle being in business and small business. And, the majority of small business owners are standalone sole traders, or even just, if they're a company structure, they're still often working as that sole operator anyway.
And it's very hard as the sole operator to not only wear 10 different hats within your own organisation, but then try and find peers that can either not just help you by giving you or referring more business to you, but just for the support. And often that's what we crave. Why do you think we need the structure of networking groups like BX?
Oh, I think we need structure in networking. So we needed a format to come together for networking, but we also need a format in that networking. The two are really important. So I've been a member of many different networking organizations over my time, and they all have their place. But what I felt was really missing, and where BX was created, was the gap sort of in the middle. So there's lots of hardcore networking out there that are hugely accountable, often very early morning starts, and quite costly to go along to, and high commitment level. Then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is quite low accountability, often run monthly, people
monthly or quarterly.
Yeah. So
as an add-on to a membership to something.
That's right. So what I wanted to create was something where it had a regular format to keep people top of mind, but also a format and a structure within that meeting that was fun and friendly and easygoing, but actually still created a result and a return on investment. So that's the fundamental purpose. You come along to a networking event to build connections, not to sell to each other, but to build connections to people outside of the room. And whether that be a direct referral or whether it's a referral partner, and we prefer to talk referral partners, but we'll probably get into that in a bit. But definitely, you need a format to bring people together, but you also need a format once they're together to maximise the time they're investing.
Now, BX Networking is a business, and you need other people in the organisation to help run the networking events and the business itself. And you draw from the membership and put them in those positions of being team leaders or a regional leader.
Yeah.
How are you working at that? How do you define, or are you interviewing prospective people to become those leaders and those peers that you need in that organisation to encourage others in the networking group? I mean, I'm the kind of person who, has to be relatively outgoing for the kind of work that I do, whether it's my political life or doing any media or in my own businesses. But networking is something that has always been a huge struggle for me. So getting me to come out of my shell in those kind of environments, surprisingly enough, Matt, is a huge problem for me. So how do you go about selecting those leaders that would bring people out of their shell for those environments?
Well, I'll answer that second. I'll touch on the point that you talked about with yourself. And I think people would naturally look at someone like you or me and go, oh, they must be a natural at networking because they're always doing it. They're out and about and they're always putting themselves in a position where they're amongst a lot of people. But you as an example and me an example, we're both, I would say I'm quite introverted in a sense where if I walk into a room full of strangers, I'm probably going to stand back and really assess. And I'm not essentially quite comfortable in a situation like that. But you know what? That is like 99% of people. Whereas most people think they're the 1% that's uncomfortable in a room like that. Well, that's 99%. And that's why the structure is so important, because if you have awkward standing around and stuck with that person with the bad breath kind of situations, then people, give networking a bad name for starters, but it also helps you or deters from getting and detracts from getting a good return on investment. But
actually, you've just jumped on something that was next on my list. As you mentioned early on, there are different spectrums of networking, and at one end of the extreme is where there's the really early starts and it's an expensive membership, and it creates all sort of rules and regulations that have to be met and criteria constantly. You're always having to hit certain targets. The other end is the very casual, no structure, no commitment. So let's say you're somewhere in the middle or somewhere on that line somewhere. What kind of return on investment are members getting when they're in a structured paid environment that you're offering?
Yeah,
because let's say whoever's listening here, often the business owner will say, well, what will I get for this? But it's not just your welcome pack and all the paraphernalia that got, by the way, thank you for that. I got mine with my name badge. What are they looking at as a return on investment?
Yeah, it's a good question.
And how do you nail that?
Yeah, well, a lot of what we give people, so we talk about all the value add that we bring from BX. Like we have like lots of partners that give their programs, their paid programs and things like that. So we've got all this stuff that floats around the outside of your membership, which is the value add. But when I'm talking to a potential new member, my conversation always goes along the line of, you are joining BX to make more sales. All the other stuff that you think sounds really exciting, it is, but it's not why you join. You join because you want to get more sales in your business. And this is a marketing process to get more sales. So we're not going to sell to each other here. We may still buy from each other because once we build a relationship with someone and we like what they do, then we're probably going to buy from them if we need it. But we don't sell to each other exclusively. We try and hold back from doing that because, in fact, if you hold back from selling, you're more inclined to want to buy from that person. But the return on investment factor is really important. And obviously, the harder the networking, the stronger so one end of the spectrum, you're going to get a stronger return on investment. And down the other softer end, you're going to get maybe no return on investment. It's more about just relationships and connecting with people. But where we sit, we're quite strategic also about the types of connections we're helping people build. So we want people to be out.
As you're saying, there has to be the consideration of the return on investment. And you've highlighted that immediately. You're having a conversation with a member and saying, you're here to make sales.
Yes.
You're here to make money.
Yes.
And I think it should be a common sense answer, but highlighting it that emphatically is an understanding for that small business owner, and suddenly for it to click and go, yeah, that's right. I'm here to get to know other people, to have peer support, but let's not forget that I am here to make money in addition to whatever else I do. And in that strange way, Matt, they're expanding their social business circle, right? Mm-hmm. Something that you don't often get to do outside of networking because, it's your staff and it's your customers and then it's your family.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then, you don't know what else you're going to get.
That's right.
So Matt, you had planned one business strategy this year, and that was to expand quite a bit. And India was part of that strategy.
Yeah.
COVID sorted you out.
I guess divine intervention maybe stopped us from doing that, but our global plans were definitely put on hold this year. Although we have launched in New Zealand online.
But we don't consider that far away, so.
No, that's the Pacific bubble. So I think potentially we'll still go to New Zealand and some other countries based on what's happened during COVID with our online boom. Things have definitely changed for us. But we had a plan for over 100 groups launching this year. We got about 20 extra groups that we launched this year, and then March hit, and then all stopped, unfortunately.
That's right. We all faced that interruption, and then we all had to make an assessment as to whether we could pivot, shut down, relax, not relax, or you could be SME TV and you launch right at COVID, which is what we did do. So Matt, you found yourself in a position where your business plan had to change.
Dramatically.
And then suddenly you're finding that the very thing that was the highlight of your organisation wasn't allowed anymore, which is the face-to-face contact, and you had to go online. Now the have to, and then the result of that have to, is that you've found a whole new way of connecting.
I guess we were fortunate in a way that we'd been running some online events, like monthly online events, and from a networking perspective to try and connect our members up globally anyway. So we had done some work there, which gave us like we were comfortable using Zoom and things like that. But the interesting thing is that my ops director, Lorraine McKenzie, and I, back in January when all the Wuhan stuff was happening, and COVID was breaking out in China, I said, wow, like they've locked down this state. Imagine that happened here. And we laughed about it.
So it's your fault.
Yeah, we put it out there. Yeah, don't blame me, please.
I was in China at Christmas.
Oh, wow. So you could have brought it back with you. It could have been you.
Might have been me, but I isolated for 14 days.
Okay. I'm just taking the pressure off me here, Angela. I thought I'd put it back onto you.
Big shoulders.
But we just went, what would happen? And we probably only spoke about it for an hour. And then as things progressed into February, we said, well, you know what, let's look at, you know, what the structure we'd need to play if some of our other cities in Australia went into lockdown and stuff like that. So we had been talking about the potential of it happening and putting some really loose plans into place sort of January, February. And then as March sort of proceeded, on my birthday, March 22nd, when the PM announced that we were going to lockdown, I was like really concerned because we are predominantly a face-to-face, in-person business. And I thought, well, is that our whole business that's just going to stop? And I thought, well, what do our members want right now? And what do they need right now? And when we started having those conversations, they are like, please, what are you going to do? What can you do? Because we need to keep, you know, turning over. We need new sales, new income, and we need to keep growing our business. And we went, well, this is what we're doing. And they're like, oh my God. And it was quite incredible, the response from our network, and just the gratitude for, you know, transitioning so quickly to what they needed right then. And Loz and I just said, Lorraine and I said, what can we do to add as much value right now as possible for our membership to give them the opportunity to keep growing their businesses when so many other businesses are really, you know, going down the toilet, like just no income.
And I think your personal experience here, on the one hand being a business coach and seeing that side of it, and on the other hand being the actual business owner, you actually got to enact and walk the talk about how you would advise a client as a coach, but then as a business owner, put that into practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had to have a plan B, a resilient strategy, a pivot, all of the things. You think it's the sum of all of your life experience and your business experience that allowed you to have that particular plan B, and you became the plan B for all of your members.
Yeah. And look, we've had some ups and downs through business. I've been in business now for almost 2 decades. And my family, my dad owned his own small businesses when we were growing up. So we, you know, always around that. But even when I was in small business, I had retail and hospitality mainly. And as you know, that's a hard business to be in. But
yep, I know you used to have a couple of Subways.
Yes, I did. And actually, my first couple of businesses, I had a business partner who ended up taking $500,000 out of the business and leaving us high and dry. And he went bust at the same time and left us with that debt. And so that, like, just going through that, I know I just said that quite flippantly, but it was quite substantial for us when it happened and for the decade following.
Their life lessons, and often the harshness at the time puts a different light on everything, but
Absolutely.
The lessons that you learn are invaluable.
And empathy for people that were going through challenges. Like, we've just put all our membership payments on hold for all of our Victorian members right now. They're still fully able to engage in our network. We put their payments on hold, like, even though it's a small amount of money in the scheme of things. Just that empathy, being able to go, well, that's just one thing I don't have to worry about this month or next month. And
that's crucial though, Matt. That's an outstanding show of support for them.
Yeah. Well, look, and it's just, we just feel like I feel very bad for Victorians right now, because lots of people go, oh, Victoria, but it's not. It's these poor people in Victoria who just got bad luck right now, and went into lockdown because of some other Australians, whether they were Victorian or whatever. We're all Australians, and a couple of people made bad decisions, and it's cost Victoria considerably, and the jobless rate in Victoria, and the small business and the